back. WNST. Another weekend of having our noses pressed up to the glass, watching playoff football that we're not a part of. This guy, I think he's rooting for the Minnesota Vikings privately, but I'll let him tell you. We welcome our head coach on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation and, of course, our Super Bowl winning head coach here, Brian Billick, joins us. You can follow him at Coach Billick. You got a soft spot for the Vikings. Be honest, Coach.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I can't think. I would just love to see them parlay this into being the first home team ever in the Super Bowl. The fans there would love it. I think it's going to be a great venue for it, and I think they're a good enough team to do it.
Well, here come the Atlanta Falcons to Philadelphia, and if they win that game, the Vikings would not have to leave home to win the Super Bowl. Think about that. So, they'll go to bed Saturday night knowing win 3 in a row, we get to celebrate in our own street. But let's start with the other game and with where Matt Ryan is and where the Falcons, we knew they were dangerous all along. We knew the Rams could have some trouble out of the gate, and they did on Saturday night. But the Falcons have now positioned themselves to go into Philadelphia as a favorite to go to an NFC Championship game.
Yeah, and deservedly so. I mean, they still are not a team that I think is comfortable of having hit their stride like they did last year, and that's a good thing because particularly on the defensive side of the ball, they're playing pretty good. They really are. I'm doing a piece on my show Playbook this week. To me, the hallmark of a good defense, the number one thing, if people, and they do all the time, ask me about our 2000 record-setting Raven defense, what jumps out at me about that team? It's their ability to tackle in the open field. They minimize gains with yards after the catch, and they make it very difficult to get the big play down the field. And right now, that Falcon defense is doing just that. So obviously the Eagles are a team, if they can, on the road, I'm talking about the Falcons now, against the Eagles, can keep Nick Foles from making the big plays, the screens and little drop-offs and those type of throws that they want to make, if they can minimize those gains, and that Falcon offense that certainly has a lot of firepower with Julio Jones and Mohamed Sanu, and then the tandem out of the backfield with Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman. This is a pretty good group. They're going to give the Eagles everything they can, and I think they're favored, if I'm not mistaken.
That's as much a psychological thing from a coaching aspect as anything, right? For what Quinn's gone through and Ryan and all the guys who were part of that last year, that it's now sitting there in front of them all over again through their hard work, because it was not an easy regular season in Atlanta, and it certainly was no fun in the offseason. I mean, they've had very little joy around there the last 48, 49 weeks, right?
Yeah, and they know that they're going to be measured only one way, getting back and winning the Super Bowl. Anything short of that, people are going to then hearken back to, well, it was the collapse last year against New England and the residual and how good a team are they really, and they know that. They've heard it all year long. No matter what they did during the season made no difference. It's, let's see what you do in the playoffs and if you can go back and win a Super Bowl.
Certainly was not a beautiful brand of football on the AFC side of the docket last week, Coach. We have two, large point spreads here for Pittsburgh and New England. Not that it's any shock, but certainly the way Kansas City went out, and your dear friend Andy Reid out there and losing a home game. I guess we sort of got what we bargained for. Those were not very good football teams last week, and I don't really get that vibe about Tennessee, and I've seen Blake Bortles throw the football. It's really kind of unbelievable how inconsistent he is, right?
Yeah, that was as bad an exhibition of quarterback play as I've seen in a long time, and I've seen a few, as we all know. That defense is as advertised. You go back, and obviously in the Week 5 when they ran all over the Steelers, no, I don't think Ben Roethlisberger is going to throw 5 interceptions again. But let's remember the Jacksonville Jaguars ran for 231 yards that game. And the last part of the season, some teams, including the Ravens, have run on them. So that's going to be really the key. Is the defense better than it has been in stepping up and at home and limiting that running game? And then obviously can Ben Roethlisberger stay away from the 5 interceptions? I went back and looked at the 5 interceptions because I wanted to look at something to see, okay, was there something that Jacksonville did to be able to force those 5 turnovers? And yeah, they can apply pressure. There was one where pressure was a factor. But quite frankly, Ben just missed 5 times. And it's hard to imagine he's going to do that again.
Hard to dislike New England at this point in the tournament, right, Coach? I don't, and all the stuff that happened last week with Brady and Belichick, I'm assuming you read the piece or at least very familiar with this. I can't, how long do we expect this thing to go on? I mean, you were dealing with it. You've been out of the game almost 10 years, and he was as big a foe as you had when you weren't being confused with him and Belichick and Billick and airports and whatnot. But I don't think any of us can expect this to go on forever. The Garoppolo deal was very, very strange by any standard, and now that there's been some sort of flesh on it and a storyline here, I don't think it affects them winning or losing over the next couple of weeks, but I do think it's interesting to see, will there be a kumbaya? Will this be the team of Belichick and Brady next year? And I guess that story will play itself out. I think that they're probably going to win the Super Bowl. I'll be shocked if they don't win the Super Bowl, Coach.
Yeah, the Palace intrigue is always interesting, obviously, when you're as good as the Patriots have been. I think it's much ado about nothing. Garoppolo, there's not much else you could do. He was going to garner, what are you going to do? You're going to kick Brady out and say, okay, Garoppolo, we're going to give you one of these $100 million contracts, because that's what he was going to get. And there was just no good way for this to happen. In a practical business sense, could you look at it and say, well, let's win the Super Bowl, and you know what? Let's tell Tom Brady it's about time to go, because we're probably close to it. I'm not going to ever say he's not good enough, but he's probably getting close to it. We don't want to let Garoppolo go, and we'll give him one of those, and we'll just continue this on with an incredible string of quarterbacks. But this is Tom Brady, and that's just not going to happen. And so, whether he was pushing for Garoppolo to leave, from a business standpoint, if you made the determination that we're going to stick with Tom Brady, and how do you not? Then Garoppolo had to go, as much as you hate to see him go. And that's just the way the business side falls. The other stuff, you deal with it all the time, the personal trainers, and are they in the building, and how are you going to deal with that? You deal with that all the time as a head coach. So I think this is probably a bit much ado about nothing, unless, and I have no idea, unless Belichick in the back of his mind is kind of thinking, you know what, Brady's about done. I want to go back to New York. I want to take on that challenge. I'll win a couple there, maybe keep Eli Manning there. I don't know. You can build up that conspiracy theory all you want, but I agree with you. I'm not betting against the Patriots.
Well, and the other side of this thing where you say sort of casually or cavalierly, well, we got to tap him and let him know it's time to go. Boy, that's not an easy thing to do, and and I battled with that in the media side with Ray Lewis toward the end, and when you left the team, because nothing here lasts forever. The winning, even something as good as what they've had up in New England, it doesn't last forever, and somebody usually has to tap somebody on the shoulder and hurt somebody's feelings at some point, and that is, look, Steve had it easier with Ray Lewis, right? Ray won and just went, and Reed went and did something else, and Peyton Manning got tapped on the shoulder and wound up going to Denver and win, and Jimmy Irsay's still trying to figure it out at this point in hiring another coach. So it's never as easy as all that, but I think we're all wondering, how will this end? Will Belichick and Brady go arm in arm out the side? It feels to me like Belichick wants to coach 10 more years or 6 more years or build something else that he hasn't done at this point, right?
Yeah, Tom Brady in year 18 threw for better than 4,500 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. Can anybody say they see anything at all that thinks this guy can't continue to be productive? Now, when it falls, when it goes quick. But I'm certainly not I can't look at him right now and say, you know what, he's getting close. Well, common sense says he's getting close, but certainly there's nothing in this season that indicates that he's going to be anything less than productive going forward. So you're right, walking that fine line. And for that organization, and that's why I'm saying right now, they have to look at it and say, no, we see nothing to indicate Brady's not going to come back and play well next year and the year after that. And we're in a position with Garoppolo where he's not going to agree to one of these smaller contracts to wait Brady out, because he knows he had a major payday waiting for him, and he's now going to get paid in San Francisco. So it's one of those things where this is just an unfortunate side of business that was absolutely unavoidable. And I don't know that anybody in that organization ought to feel like they were forced into it, that it was the wrong decision. It's real simple. You either tell Brady he's done and keep Garoppolo, or you keep rolling. And how does anybody in that organization, based on the way Brady played this year, say, oh, no, he's about done?
The only thing either one of them have never done is win it without the other guy, right? I mean, there would be some intrigue in that if Belichick would say, I'm going to go try to win one without Brady to show you how great I am, or Brady to say, I'm going to win one without Belichick to show you how great I am. I think there probably is a little bit of that in that relationship 20 years in.
Well, at 20 years, you know, you and I both love our wives, but you ever get pissed off? Sure. I mean, do they ever do anything that at some point you're going, God, I wish they wouldn't do that? Well, sure. After 18 years, you're right. And it's a strong relationship. But at some point, is that a motivation for both of them? Hard to say. Maybe in the deep hollows of their competitive spirit, that might be there. I'm going to show you I can do this with somebody else. It's not like either one of them needs to do that to validate their Hall of Fame credentials.
That is for sure. He is Coach Billick out on Twitter and our partner on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation. All of our work here brought to you by Freedmont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need Freedmont's education online. Go to Freedmont.com if you're buying, selling, or refinancing. Coach, we talked about the Minnesota Vikings and how cool it would be that they could wake up if Atlanta wins in Philadelphia and they are favored on Saturday, that they would just have to win. And then here comes Drew Brees. And, I don't watch a lot of the Saints, right? Because I'm watching the Ravens, and I know you called those NFC games even back when he was at that point. He looks like a magician out there at this point in his career, doing it, certainly on turf, certainly inside. He'll have that going for him on Sunday. The Saints are going to be a tough out for the Vikings on Sunday afternoon.
Very much so, because of Drew Brees. They get that running tandem of Kamara and Ingram, and then when it falters, like it did against Carolina, by the way, we've got a Hall of Famer in Drew Brees that can throw it up 40, 45 times and beat you. Here's the thing, though, with the Vikings. You talk about up there on that fast turf. Yeah, it's going to be loud. Now, they're going to get a little bit of what Carolina got in terms of the noise, in terms of, the ends now getting the jump on those tackles to get to Drew Brees. And let's remember now, these Vikings, they played the Rams and held Gurley to 45 yards. They played the Falcons in Atlanta and held Freeman and Coleman to just at 100 yards. Okay, so this defense is capable of, with their 7-man front, stopping that running game, accounting for those backs, and again, let's remember, they opened up the season against New Orleans and held New Orleans to 60 yards rushing and Alvin Kamara to only 20 yards receiving on 4 receptions. So this defense in the Vikings is for real. It's going to be the biggest challenge the Saints will have. You can't, and if you're going to look at it and say, well, it's Case Keenum versus Drew Brees. Well, of course you're going to pick Drew Brees, but that Viking defense at home is going to be something special. And as good as the New Orleans defense is and has gotten better, this is, again, I'm pulling for the Vikings. This is going to be a challenge, but you're absolutely right. If anybody can do that, it's going to be Drew Brees.
Back when we needed a quarterback, back when you needed a quarterback, Brees was floating around. Boy, he was a little bit toxic, right? I mean, he was thought to be banged up, small. The notion that 13 years later he's still doing that, it's right up there with the Tom Brady achievements for sure. But he was a guy that the Chargers said no thanks. Either the Dolphins gave it a look. We were certainly in the market, but he was one of those guys you looked at, and now you look back and say it's kind of maybe like Jamie Moyer in baseball. You look back and say, how did he do that down there?
Well, that's one of those, not to be critical of you, we're like everybody. The doctors declined him, failed him on the physical, except for New Orleans. And that's one of those you go back and you want to sit down with the docs and say, okay, now look at these numbers, because I'm looking at all these years, and he's coming off a 23 touchdown, 8 interception. The year before, 37 touchdowns. He always throws over 600 times, except for this year. He hasn't had to because of the running game. How's it now? Tell me again how that shoulder, we failed that shoulder, But New Orleans, give them credit. They're the only ones that stuck their necks out and said, no, we believe in it. They, kind of overruled the doctors and they're getting the benefit because of it.
Well, it's been an incredible career for him, and I know he'd like to get back there as well as Peyton. That'll be the late game. Thoughts on some Steelers and the Jaguars? I think it's an interesting matchup for the Steelers, and I know we talked about it a little bit before, but, are they built to go into Foxborough and win this thing 2 weeks from now, Coach?
I think they are, if they play the way they're capable of playing. If Ben can play on the road like he does at home, the defense is going to be challenged. They matched up. The tough thing, and they played the man you have to play against New England. You know you can't play all that zone against New England. And they did the last time and did a decent job. They did some really dumb things, though, in leaving Gronkowski one-on-one. I mean, that's the one guy you got to take away. Tomlin and Butler need to do their inner Belichick and say, okay, if there's one guy that's not going to beat us, we're not going to let it be Gronkowski. Now, Hogan can get down the field and Cooks and all that. Okay, that's cool. But there were a number of times when Gronkowski was one-on-one and the double help in man coverage went someplace else. How can that happen? You know, if they do it again, no, they're going to lose again. But they're capable of sorting that out. And that offense, again, you know, they get into a rhythm and Ben has one of those games on the road that he's capable of having at home, then certainly they are. Am I going to bet on it? Probably not. But they're probably the only team in the AFC that has a chance of going in and doing just that.
You can find him out at the NFL Network, marking it up on Playbook as well as all weekend during the games at Coach Billick out on Twitter. He's our partner on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation. Happy New Year, Coach. We'll chat again soon and see you in Minnesota in a couple weeks.
Sounds great.
You got it. Brian Billick joining us here on behalf of the Living Classrooms Foundation. You can learn more about all the work that they do here in our community at livingclassrooms.org. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from wherever you happen to be. Our morning newspaper delivers to your email inbox free of charge each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all powered up by Planet Fitness and planetfitness.com, where it's always $10 a month, never any commitment. And part of our morning newspaper now is going to be my reissuing of Purple Rain 2 out online, releasing 24 chapters, one chapter a day, every day, leading up to the 5th anniversary of the Ravens Super Bowl win in New Orleans. So you'll want to be checking that out in the morning newspaper as well as out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. We stream live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. And if you want breaking news, you get that first on our WNST text service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and you get that first. And Dennis will be here on Thursday driving you home from 3 until 5. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.